Hello everybody, it's really nice to see you all, and today we're going to be learning in our KS1 history class about Robin Hood. Now Robin Hood is one of my favourite characters of all time. You're going to learn from today's lesson that a lot of people say that he never existed. Now I want you to pause the video for a second and just, if mum or dad's next to you, just tell them what you know, or write down what you know about Robin Hood first of all. So pause the video, write down what you know about Robin Hood. Okay, now I want you to again pause the video, and I want you to write down whether you think he was a real person or not. I believe he actually existed, but we're going to watch a little video in a moment that is quite interesting because there's a lot of different characters through history that many people believe might have been Robin Hood. But I'm not going to explain that properly. I'm going to do the video now. So I'm just going to pause this for a second and get the video set up. And we'll just watch that for a few minutes. Then we've got a presentation, and then I'll tell you what your homework is. So here's the video, and we're just going to watch this for a few minutes. I might pause it a few times, but here we go. Just watch this with me, all about Robin Hood.
Who was Robin Hood? Where did he come from? And why is his story shrouded in mystery? We are going to find the hidden truths about this famous outlaw and see if Robin Hood was real or not. We asked some people at Nottingham Castle on what they thought about Robin Hood and if they believed he was real.
I think it's very difficult to tell who was the original Robin Hood.
Now, Robin Hood as a story is kind of always one of those stories that rolls on through history, and it adds to and dissipates.
It was an old historical folk hero used to inspire people and to give them a sense of justice in an otherwise wrongful world.
Well, some say he was a peasant, some say he was a nobleman returning from the Crusades.
Obviously, the legends have been told about him for a long time, even before the name starts turning up in historical court records.
So everyone knows the story of Robin Hood. How he was outlawed by Prince John and forced to live in the Sherwood Forest, where he and his band of merry men stole from the rich and gave to the poor. His story tells of him becoming a hero of the people. People believe he was from Nottingham, but stories say otherwise. He's said to have come from a village called Locksley, located outside the city of Sheffield in Yorkshire. There are accounts of him being from towns and villages in Yorkshire, and even tales of him being from Scotland. A big theory is that the name Robin Hood is a persona taken by a number of people over time. That's why various locations have their own form of Robin Hood tale. In this documentary, we'll be uncovering certain moments in history which will help us to locate the real Robin Hood. Let's start from the beginning. Firstly, we need to look at when Richard I left for the Crusades. Stories state that Robin left with Richard for the Crusades in 1190. The first time a name resembling Robin Hood is seen in 1228, recorded in parish records as Hobhod or Robert Hood. This man could have never have been to the Crusades, as if he did, he would now be a much older man, as it's 38 years later. In 1265, a man named Roger Godberd was outlawed for fighting against King Henry III in the Battle of Evesham. Nearly 2 centuries later, circa 1446, Walter Bower claimed that Robin Hood also became an outlaw as a result of this battle. In October 1267, Godberd settled in Sherwood Forest, where he lived for 4 years. He would call upon 100 men, but was caught at Rufford Abbey in 1272 by the Sheriff of Nottingham and escaped. It's been suggested that he's the historical basis of Robin Hood. In 1324, a manservant named Robin Hood is employed by King Edward II. The name of this man closely resembles the way in which Robin Hood is spelt today, barring the Y, which was a common thing in Old English. This Robin was the king's servant, but stories of Robin Hood say he was a nobleman, who are people who own their own lands and titles, so this Robin may just be another piece in the puzzle. Around 1372 to 1377, records found a certain Robin Hod, later called Hobhod, was a tenant of the Archbishop of York in Henry III's time, 1216 to 1272. Again, the name Hobhod has appeared making two incarnations. At around the same time in 1377, poet William Langland mentioned the ballads of Robin Hood in his poem Piers Plowman. In 1420, Andrew of Wintown was the first historian to mention Robin Hood. He placed him in Scotland in 1283, where there was no mention of Nottingham or Sherwood. Unfortunately, he supplies no evidence as to what he based the date on. In 1441, historian Walter Bower wrote about Robin Hood living in the 1260s. This man lived in the same time as Henry III, which is similar to the Hobhod character. This is now the third time Hobhod has been linked to Robin Hood. But remember, Bower said Robin became an outlaw at the Battle of Evesham, just like Roger Godberd. In 1521, historian John Major wrote A History of Greater Britain and set Robin Hood in the time of Richard I, 1189 to 1199. 1601, playwrights Munday and Chettle wrote a play called The Downfall of Robert Earl of Huntington. This is the first we hear that he was associated with the Earl of Huntington. Later, in 1746, William Stukely gave him the name Robert Fitzooth, or Fitzooth, Earl of Huntington, which alleged dates 1160 to 1247. This incarnation was set during Richard I's reign. 1632, poet Martin Parker wrote A True Tale of Robin Hood. It was the first instance of him robbing from the rich to give to the poor. And from the 1800s onwards, many scholars and historians have been trying to look for the truth behind Robin Hood and have had mixed results. Looking at this timeline, it's hard to pinpoint where the original Robin Hood came from, but maybe that's just the mystery of Robin Hood. We can all have our own ideas of who he was, and that's what makes Robin Hood Robin Hood.
There you go. That was very interesting, wasn't it? So I'm just going to pause there. So which one do you think was the real Robin Hood? Now, obviously, there was a lot of different examples there. The one I personally think was, I believe that there was a person called Robin Hood or Robin of Locksley around the time of King Richard I, King Richard the Lionheart, as he was nicknamed. He was a very famous king that was often away fighting abroad, and most of the time the country was being run by his brother, Prince John. Prince John, the famous king that would later be involved in the Magna Carta, but that's for another lesson. And Richard the Lionheart was kidnapped on his way back from the Crusades in Austria. And this is where Robin Hood apparently was to come into the story. Now, there are many movies about Robin Hood, and there are many different cartoons about Robin Hood, and often the tales vary. But if you've read some of the stories with your parents when you were younger, maybe, or now, you probably would have heard about the time when he married people like Maid Marian, and you might have heard of people such as Friar Tuck and Will Scarlet. I'm going to read you a little poem here. This is a poem entitled To a Friend by a very famous poet called John Keats, and it's entitled, and it's written to Robin Hood. And listen to this. It says, "No, those days are gone away, and their hours are old and grey, and their minutes buried all under the downtrodden pall of the leaves of many years. Many times have winter's shears, frozen north and chilling east, sounded tempest to the feast of the forest's whispering fleeces, since men knew nor rent nor leases. No, the bugle sounds no more, and the twanging bow no more. Silent is the ivory shrill, past the heath and up the hill. There is no mid-forest laugh, where lone echo gives the half to some wight amazed to hear, jesting deep in forest drear. On the fairest time of June, you may go with sun or moon, or the 7 stars to light you, or the polar ray to right you. But you never may behold Little John or Robin Bold, never one of all the clan, thrumming on an empty can. Some old hunting ditty while he doth his green way beguile, to fair hostess merriment down beside the pasture Trent, where he left the merry tale messenger for spicy ale. Gone the merry Morris din, gone the song of Gamelin, gone the tough-belted outlaw, idling in the green shore. All are gone away and past, and if Robin should be cast, sudden from his turfed grave, and if Marian should have once again her forest days, she would weep and he would craze. He would swear for all his oaks, fallen beneath the dockyard strokes, have rotted on the briny seas. She would weep that her wild bees sang not to her, strange that honey can't be got without hard money. Last verse. So it is, yet let us sing, honour to the old bowstring, honour to the bugle horn, honour to the woods unshorn, honour to the Lincoln green, honour to the archer keen, honour to tight Little John and the horse he rode upon, honour to bold Robin Hood, sleeping in the underwood, honour to Maid Marian, and to all the Sherwood clan. Though their days have hurried by, let us too a burden try. So that was a very famous Robin Hood poem there. Now I'd just like to share a presentation with you that we'll just go through together, if that's okay. So this is about Robin Hood. So let's just look at this. The legend of Robin Hood. So who was he? Well, we've just spoken about him a lot already in a poem and the video as well. As you can see there, he's wearing Lincoln green. As part of your homework, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to give you a presentation, a file in a minute, where it's a wanted poster of Robin Hood. I want you to design it as well. But I also want you, the next time you're walking in the woods or in a forest, to imagine what it would have been like to be one of Robin Hood's merry men or women. You can give yourself a name, such as Friar Tuck, Robin Hood, Little John, Will Scarlet, but call it something along the lines of your name, okay? And I want you to think, so why were they wearing green, do you think? It was called Lincoln green, so why would that have been good in the forest, do you think? So maybe write that answer down as well. Find out some facts that you know about Robin Hood. Maybe some of you have been to Nottingham and seen the statue there of Robin Hood, and find out about the forest that he lived in. So I'm going to read this. It says, there are lots of stories about Robin Hood that have been passed down through the generations. He is thought to have lived in Sherwood Forest in medieval times, so a long, long time ago. The stories state that Robin Hood was an outlaw. An outlaw was someone who had broken the law. It is said that he lived in the forest with other outlaws who are known as his merry men. So there you go. There's a picture of a map of England there with Nottingham in the middle there. So the Sheriff of Nottingham was in charge of looking after Nottingham for the King of England, King Richard I, who I mentioned earlier was away fighting in another country. The Sheriff was thought to be an unkind and greedy man. He made people pay taxes, which he said he would spend on looking after Nottingham and making it a nice place to live. However, the Sheriff increased the taxes more and more, making it impossible for some people to afford them. When they couldn't pay, he made them homeless. That's not very nice, is it? So there's a picture there of Robin Hood and some of his merry men. Little John is the big guy on the end. So Robin and his merry men did not think that this was fair at all, and many stories say that they robbed money and treasures from the rich people and gave them to the poor people who had nothing. This is why Robin Hood was known as an outlaw. So many people believe that Robin Hood was a hero because he helped the poor people, but many people think he was a bad person because he stole. What do you think? Interesting, isn't it? Now, also another funny thing about this time is that Robin Hood, a lot of the poorer people, were Saxons at this time. And they were kind of like the Old English. And often in history, the Normans are fighting the Saxons, and Old English people used to cheer on the Saxons. But it's interesting because they now believe that Robin Hood was actually a Norman lord. So should the Saxons English have been cheering on Norman lord? Well, that's another interesting fact to consider, isn't it? But it's up to you what you think about that. So who were Robin Hood's merry men? Well, many of Robin Hood's merry men are mentioned throughout the stories. They were his friends and companions. It is not known exactly how many merry men are included in all of the stories, but here are a few of them. So Friar Tuck, as you can see from the picture, he's a monk, or like it says here, a kind-hearted priest. He would give the money that Robin took to the poor people. And Little John, he's said to be Robin's second in command of the merry men. Although his name is Little John, he is often described as being very tall and large in the stories. So it was almost like a nickname to kind of like say, he's big, so we're going to call him Little as a joke. And Will Scarlet, a skilled swordsman and also Robin's nephew. And as you can see, he's not wearing green, he's wearing like a scarlet top. So that might have been the reason why he was called Will Scarlet. We don't know for sure. Much the miller's son, he became an outlaw when he was caught poaching deer on the sheriff's land. He was the son of a miller. So basically poaching meant when they were hunting for animals. And the king and the Normans said that the deer, this came from the time of William the Conqueror, who invaded England in 1066, said that all the animals were the property of the king, basically. So people weren't allowed to kill them or poach them. So that's why it was a crime. Maid Marian was Robin Hood's true love, according to the stories. And they were married in St. Mary's Church in Edwinstowe and remained together for the rest of their lives. She was also Richard I's cousin, so she was royalty, if the stories are true. So where did he live? Well, in some tales, it is thought that Robin used the major oak tree that's in this picture, which can be found in Sherwood Forest Country Park, as a hideout. Now, I know many of you love Center Parcs, and Center Parcs has one of their places in Sherwood Forest in Nottingham. So if you've ever been there, you've probably been in the area where Robin Hood used to live. So like we said, and we saw in the video, was he real? Well, people's thoughts and opinions are divided, even today. We saw that in the video too, and probably some of you will say, yes, he existed, and some of you will say, no, he didn't. Ask your families, what do they think? But there's been many stories, ballads, and poems, we just read one of them, about him. Others believe that he really did exist, and it is thought he was a popular character during the medieval times because of his generosity or kindness to the poor, as not many people were very kind to the poor, so he stood out as a bit different. So that ends our presentation. So as just a reminder then, what I'd like to show you as well is something else. So I'm just going to pause the video. What I'd like to do then, also for the homework, I'd like to just share this little page. I don't know if you can see this. So we've got a wanted poster of Robin Hood. So I'm going to put this on the chat later, but you can maybe design something like that. So you can draw a picture of Robin Hood, put wanted on there. So imagine you're the Sheriff of Nottingham. So write his name, Robin Hood. What is he wanted for? Write down what he's wanted for, and write down what the reward would be. Okay, so that can be your homework too. Also, what I said about the walking in the forest, imagine what it would be like. And you can also give yourself a name. But the interesting thing is that Robin Hood, whether he was real or not, still lives on today in legend and in history today. We still talk about him, don't we? So whether or not he's true or not, we might well never know, but we might well find out in the future. Who knows? But it still makes for an interesting story, doesn't it? And a lovely history lesson. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you learned something new. Thank you very much.